We gotta record it. Okay, it is being recorded now.
Thank you. All right, so today, I have this all ready to go. Okay. So for today, what we want to do is go through an update on some conversations we've had. Um, what we experienced is that we tried to push for blood drives in Rochester, and I was a strong proponent of this as well. And we had some significant pushback, which was surprising, but also really enlightening and a really good opportunity to have some conversations around the history of blood donation with the LGBTQ community, why there's pushback in Rochester, some of the feelings among the leadership in Rochester, community leadership in Rochester. And it really allowed us to take pause and know that we need to kind of really think carefully about our strategy. Overall, I think as a Western New York regional group, and how we're supporting ourselves as members of the community and allies within the Red Cross, as well as supporting the outside community that we work with, allowed us to step back and kind of think through like, what are some things that we need to be prepared to talk about when we're going out? We have a huge list of events that we'll talk about at the end. What are some potential conversations that we're going to have, that we should have, that we need to have, to be able to start, connecting with the greater community and being a resource there. So Carrie and I had a lot of discussions about what to do. And Carrie's suggestion was, let's try to have some training, let's try to have some understanding. So what we've worked on here is a review of the historical context, just so everyone has this perspective, because like a lot of it, like I was surprised when learning through that, when I was learning and going through this, and it's somewhat shocking. And then go through some of the current, give some examples of some of the current discussions around mixed feelings and reactions about blood donation, about how it's made the Red Cross be viewed, and then discuss some tools to facilitate productive conversations. And I want to like just put like a disclaimer, like for me, I've done trainings around like discussion and tools for having product conflict resolution and validation and tools like that. But I will facilitate this presentation, but I want to like be very clear about where I'm coming from, because I'm a white cisgender bisexual woman. I'm not someone who's lived the experiences that I'm going to be sharing. So I'm here to facilitate a discussion and offer some context so that we, as allies and advocates and members of the broader community, can engage in these conversations more effectively. But I'm not someone who's lived this firsthand, and I want to make that clear that it's possible I could get things wrong, or I could, need to be corrected or challenged myself. And I want to make sure this is a safe place where everybody knows they can do that. And I want to be very upfront about that I'm not trying to tell somebody else's story for them. I'm just trying to provide some context and some tools that we can use to have some compassionate conversations. So I'm going to start with the history of blood donation. So prior to 1983, there was no donor exclusion tied to any sort of sexual orientation. In fact, there was no categorical donor exclusion at all. It was all behavioral or medical deferrals based on the individual. The ban on men who had sex with men was driven by the HIV/AIDS crisis and fear about risk factors. And it was the first and only categorical ban based on sexual orientation. It was the first and only categorical ban based on anyone, categorically. The ban The policy banned any man who had had sex with another man since 1977, even if it was once, even if they were in a monogamous long-term relationship, using protection, or if that person tested HIV negative. The first HIV testing became available in 1985. This was the ELISA test that could detect HIV 6 to 8 weeks post-infection. In 1999, the nucleic acid testing was implemented, and it became the kind of the gold standard that's still used today. And this test can detect HIV in 7 to 10 days post-infection. So testing was available in 1985, and the testing that can detect infection in 7 to 10 days was available by 2002. However, the lifetime ban on men who had had sex with another man, even if it was once, was not updated until December of 2015. So I'm just going to pause there because that is, I didn't even realize, like, connecting those dots was very tough. Like that's a rough thing to know. So a man who had had sex with another man since 1977, even if it was once, still couldn't give blood, even in 2014 when we had plenty of scientific testing available. And the any sort of ban based on sexual orientation wasn't eliminated until 2023 when it moved to a truly behavioral based screening. The impact was deeply dehumanizing. It labeled people as inherently risky. It reinforced the idea that gay sex was unsafe no matter the context. And it treated monogamous people, people who were, trying to protect themselves, doing what they needed to do. They were treated as biologically contaminated, not because of what they did, but because of who they were. People were denied participation in civic good. Blood donation is often framed as an act of heroism or patriotism, and being excluded from that narrative was especially painful during national crises like 9/11, natural disasters, and especially the Pulse nightclub shooting where in Orlando, where survivors couldn't donate blood to help their own community. This undermined trust in public health. Many lost faith in institutions like the FDA and the Red Cross because the policy refused to distinguish between individual risks and group identity. Even with modern HIV testing and treatment, the policy remained for 40 years, long after it lost scientific justification. And this means there's been entire generations of people denied the chance to save lives and be seen as equals. So here's just some paraphrased testimonies. These are anonymized statements, and I have a hard time reading through these, so I'm not going to, because I get somewhat choked up by some of them because it's just really hard to see the experiences that people have had. So I'm going to just pause for a moment and let you guys read them.
Yeah.
So what can we do? What can we do as a group, as a local, a regional, a Western New York group? There are some things that we can do. And what we've talked about is starting with validation. And so we can start engaging by validating this situation. Validation is the act of recognizing and affirming someone's emotional experience as real and understandable. It doesn't mean you agree with everything they say. It means you accept their feelings as valid and worth honoring. It tells the other person, you make sense, your feelings are important, I hear you. Validation opens the door to trust, especially when there's a history of exclusion and harm, and it's the opposite of reacting with defensiveness. You can validate someone's experience without agreeing with their conclusion. And I've done validation trainings in many, many contexts. This is the first time in this context, but I would say learning the skill is like a life changer. It has like the ability to improve relationships and create connections. Like if this is one skill that everybody should learn, and if there's like one skill that everybody should learn in school, I think it's validation. And just to contrast, to understand the difference here. So invalidation is when someone's feelings, experiences, or identity are dismissed, minimized, questioned, or internally, either intentionally or unintentionally. And this is usually happens unintentionally. It usually happens with the best of intentions. It often happens when we try to fix something, we try to fix their feelings, justify or defend, instead of listening and acknowledging. And it sounds like offering logic or facts, but it feels like dismissal or erasure. And this invalidation, this unintentional invalidation can deepen mistrust and emotional pain, especially when it's coming in the face of a history of discrimination or inclusion and there's a lot of pain. It tells somebody you shouldn't feel that way. So here's some examples of invalidation in this context. And I'm guilty of these. Like I've definitely said these things. We were just following the FDA rules. But the rules have changed now. It's not the same. Everyone's treated, it's not the same as it was. We are treating everyone the same. We've supported the LGBTQ community in other ways for a long time. At least you can donate now. I mean, I've said some of these. Fortunately, I had good enough relationships with the people I've said these things to that it wasn't harmful. But even myself, who's been trained in validation, was leaning into like, no, like things are different now. Let's celebrate that things are different now and not acknowledge the past. And that was my mistake in my learning journey that I had to go through in having these conversations. And the problem is that when somebody's feeling very intense and very real feelings and having very harmful experiences, and that's not acknowledged, it can make people feel invisible or like they didn't matter or like they were being explained to, like that they're the problem for not moving on. So we're going to do a little exercise and go through some potential scenarios just to kind of see how this could play out when we're at events and we're trying to talk to the community and we're trying to represent, our initiatives and our goals. So a community member comes up and says, I wanted to donate blood so badly during the Pulse shooting. I called my local Red Cross in Buffalo and they told me I couldn't because of who I sleep with. That was one of the worst days of my life, watching my community bleed and not being allowed to help. Why are you even here? So an invalidating response could be, the Red Cross didn't make the rules. It was the FDA. We're just following the regulations. The FDA has changed the regulations and you can donate now. So I'm just going to like throw it out there to anyone who wants to participate. Why would you think that this response could be invalidating?
I hope that my comments is merely going to start the conversation. I would merely, from my perspective, I would say that it is an attempt to kind of like shift the blame to someone else. And there's this saying that if you're silent about something, um, you can still be complicit. And we were all just reading this thing. Just we were wrong, And so nothing short of just apologizing, I think, is invalidating. That's just to start the conversation.
Thank you, Ken. Dawn?
So, yeah, obviously, reading your slides and the logic, how you laid it out and everything, I think that's very enlightening, and I appreciate your efforts, Nicole, to help us understand that. And so now, of course, when I look at this excuse, I see exactly, or this comment, right, this response, I see exactly how hurtful it is, especially in light of, and Ken, you just said, I think a very clear way, that idea, being silent is also being complicit. The one thing that keeps spinning through my head right now, Nicole, and how you wrote this, because you said it's about feelings and emotions, and some of your description or definitions, which I'm not criticizing the definitions, but you know what? I think what we didn't acknowledge in this response goes with it is the facts on the other side of this question, right? The facts that there was new testing available, that it had been at any point in the last 40 years, we could have said, it's been 5 years, it's been 10 years, it's been 15 years, whatever, right? That why are we still doing it the way we're doing it? And why did it take us this long to get here? So yes, I think you're right that what we have to respond to is there emotions and feelings because of the fact that this has been so personally hurtful in the way that we've addressed it, in the way the world, the country has addressed it, because we're all using these same excuses, but also the fact that what I'm thinking a lot about is they have facts on their side that we have basically ignored. For us to say, well, it's the FDA regulation, instead of saying, wait, you're right, we should be challenging the FDA regulation because there's new information, there's new data, there's new reasons for us to be challenging something that was done in 1983, I think you said. Yeah, 1983. So that's what's spinning through my mind, how awful it is that all along we've been on the defensive. And I agree with you as well, Nicole. I've done the same thing. I said, it was the law. It was, the regulations that we were held to with the FDA, and kind of passing the blame rather than taking responsibility for it as an individual and as part of an organization.
Yeah. Thank you, Dawn. Ellen?
Yeah, I just was thinking as I'm reading this and thinking about it that what's really missing here is any acknowledgement of feelings. This is just, sticking to the rules, follow the rules. What did the rules say? And it's really missing the emotional component that, the person's feelings had, and it falls short of that. And I mean, I'll just admit that I've been in this organization for a long time, and I may, in fact, have, made this mistake myself of going back to pointing to the rules and the law. And, I want to do better, which is part of the reason why I'm in this group. But yeah, I think it's just devoid of feelings.
Yeah. Thank you. Kurt?
Sort of to kind of build on what's been said, I think the other part that's missing is there's no reactionary response to it, of like, if the person's saying they feel awful about Pulse, or this lack of being able to show solidarity, recognizing that response would be like, that must have been really awful or hard. So if you're not part of like the gay community, or like MSM, something like, I can't imagine that. Or if you are, you could say like, I felt the same way, like that was really horrible. And, I also couldn't donate. I really wish things would have been different for us. Something to build that connection, because I think that's the thing that they're really aching from, is that inability to help out when help was needed.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, you guys are awesome. It deflects the responsibility. Your answers are way better. You guys understand. So I think to what everyone is saying, like, this is a potential response. So one of the goals of this is to be like a toolkit for people who may not be able, like, may be taken off guard, may not be ready for the response of having to, you know, be put in that position of like, I care about the Red Cross, but I want to defend it, but I also want to care about this person. So, you know, I think what Kurt, what you said and what others have shared is key. And this is just one potential response. You know, thank you for sharing that with me. I can't even imagine how painful that must have been for you, wanting to help and being turned away in such a critical moment. You're absolutely right to feel frustrated and hurt. The history of those policies have caused deep harm, and it's important we don't ignore that. I'm here to listen, not to justify what happens. Can I ask what changes you'd like to see going forward? So here's another potential scenario. I'm glad the Red Cross is finally showing up, but I don't know how I feel about it. I've had friends who were humiliated or misgendered trying to donate. Are you just here to make yourselves look good, or do you actually care? And you know, we're here because we support Pride. We support everyone. Everyone is welcome at the Red Cross. I think that I'd like to think that you know, that most of us would have a deeper connection, but I could see someone, you know, speaking from my own experience of like, when I get anxious or nervous, thinking like, I don't know what to say. So I would hope that someone wouldn't respond this like obtusely, but like this could happen. So maybe like just a little bit of thoughts about how this could be invalidating. And it's, you know, it glosses over the history. There's no emotion attached to it. So again,
I think Dawn has a hand up.
Thank you, Don.
That's all right. I just, what I was thinking a lot when in that second one that you had up, the, it's a very, it's a pat answer that somebody could share with no detail. So, you know, when you say something like, you know, I'm here because we support Pride, you know, well, what about Pride are you supporting? You know, like in your, not that you have to say that, but what's going on in that person's head when they say that, right? You're supporting this big concept of Pride, but are you really understanding the impact on the community and the individual people because of this history, that type of thing. So that's why I feel like it's a very, it's like a really nice marketing response, but it's not, there's no depth to it.
Yeah, exactly. So this is just another potential response. I hear that concern and I don't blame you at all for being skeptical. Too many times LGBTQ folks have been made to feel unsafe, unwelcome, and used for optics. I can promise you I'm here because I want to be part of something better. What would make you feel like we're showing up for real, not just showing up for show? Here's another scenario. I was in a monogamous relationship with another man for 8 years. We both tested regularly, but because of some blanket rule, we weren't allowed to donate. It just feels like no one ever trusted us to make responsible choices. And this is one where, you know, the invalidating response could be, well, the rules have changed now. You can donate under the new guidelines. And this one is the one that I keep like foot in mouth because I've said this, like I've been like, the rules have changed. So yeah, I'd like to welcome thoughts about how you find this to be invalidating.
I think for me, it still kind of changes the subject, right? Because the person says, I was doing like all the right things and you didn't even trust me to do that. So by kind of being forward looking, you're still not acknowledging the like retroactive harm that was there. And it's not addressing that kind of lack of trust by default, right? Rather than you did something to break the trust. We just presumed you were untrustworthy at the beginning.
Yep. Yep. Jumps right past it. So some language you could use. That sounds incredibly frustrating, especially knowing how careful and committed you were. Blanket rules like that can feel so dehumanizing. Thank you for helping me understand how these policies impacted your life directly. If you're open to it, I'd love to hear what trust and equity would look like to you in the blood donation process. Okay, I think this is the last one. And this one, I know that some people have felt like, people are angry. And so, now the Red Cross wants to celebrate Pride with us. Where were you during all those years we weren't allowed to donate, even during AIDS walks and disaster relief? And this is where the defensiveness might kick in and we might say, well, we've always supported LGBTQ people in other ways and advocated for change. That's why we're here. So why would this response be invalidating? And you guys are great. I think it's, the goal is here to have a tool for anyone, especially people who aren't exposed to this or aren't thinking about this history. And even those of us that are aware of it, but are, because of our own ignorance, weren't impacted, it's easy to default to defensiveness.
I think it's important to keep in mind that the Red Cross exists within this larger context of companies and organizations not caring about the LGBTQ plus community. And then Pride Month comes around, or suddenly it becomes cool to care about the community, and there's rainbows everywhere on they turn their logo rainbow and stuff like that. I'm not saying the Red Cross is doing that, but that's the context a lot of people are familiar with larger organizations. So when you're faced with this kind of, so now you care about Pride response, it's a larger issue, so I think we have to keep that in mind and validate that, yeah, it is the case that people haven't always put this as a priority. And I appreciate, Nicole, that in all of these scenarios, you've ended on a question or on an invitation for the other person to give their thoughts or to speak more. That, while we might know, or we might be afraid that our power is limited in terms of how much that we can change, what matters to the person in that moment is just that we listen, and that we listen to their advice and their thoughts. We don't have to say, oh, well, I can't really do anything about that. That's not helpful to the conversation. All we can do is just take their input, listen, take their opinion. And then there are ways that we're going to pass that along. We are going to be keeping this in mind and providing this type of feedback that we get from the community. So I just wanted to say that I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. While we can't change the regulations or change the organization as a whole, we can amplify voices. We can be a voice for change. We can fight for change from within, and we can do that loudly and show that we're doing it. Yeah, this one, I think I like that this talks about intent and impact, because even if our intention has always been, to alleviate suffering for all humans, it's, even if we've had a good intent, there was a really negative impact, and we were the experience of that. That impact came from us as an organization, and we need to be aware of that. So you're right to ask that. We didn't show up the way we should have in the past. And now, as we try to do better, we know it doesn't erase what happened. We're not here to pretend the past didn't happen. We're here to learn from it. What do you want to see from us if we want to make this right? So I think, just to summarize, the key principles that when we're having these discussions, start with validation, start with, like Kurt said, acknowledging the emotion that was shared with us. That sounds painful. I hear your frustration. It makes sense why you feel that way. Avoid the urge to be defensive, the urge to explain or rationalize, the urge to, put it all on the FDA, the urge to explain what's changed, and name the harm. Name it. Don't be afraid to say it. That policy was discriminatory. It was unfair. And And stay curious. Don't pretend that the past is resolved. Don't pretend this change fixed everything. You know, what would the community like to see? What would equity and repair look like from the perspective of the person you're talking to? And commit to letting the person listening, let the person absorb what you say. Don't try to control the conversation. Give them space to continue talking and sharing. They're giving us a gift when they're willing to share their stories and tell us how their experience has been. And I want to put this here because I know when I've done this training in other contexts, it gets hard because naming the harm can feel like almost an admission of guilt, and that makes, and people want to walk around it, they want to like tiptoe around it, and naming the harm is incredibly important. When people have been hurt, especially if that hurt is on a large scale and it's occurred over many, many years, healing isn't going to start with an explanation or even an apology. It's going to begin when we acknowledge the reality of what happened. Like what Ken said in the beginning, we got it wrong. And we need to say that. We need to be in that space in order to build trust. And when we're willing to do that, it shows that we've done our homework, we understand the harm. We're not asking somebody to prove to us that they experienced pain, and we're able to sit with discomfort over that, and we want to have an honest discussion with them. So these are just some of the references that the validation pieces came from, if you're interested. And so what's next for us as a group? I think the first step is let's accept that it's okay to love the Red Cross and acknowledge the harm at the same time. That doesn't have to be cognitive dissonance. We can sit in both spaces. We should practice self-validation and self-compassion too. And, you know, think about how these discussions are impacting us, and understanding that even if we didn't experience these things experiences directly, we might still feel very strongly about it. We might feel guilt, like myself, and those of us who have invalidated some of these experiences out of the best of intentions. So, you know, be aware, be okay with yourself, and then join the dialogue and have these conversations, and don't be afraid of them, and allow your agenda to be just to listen, understand, and connect. And this line stems from what started all this, and that was the push for pride drives in Rochester. And that our agenda was really, well, we want to have pride drives. And we had to really pause, because were we pushing our Red Cross agenda onto the community, or were we actually doing something to benefit the community? And we had to really pause and say, like, what agenda are we operating off of? And that's when we decided as a Pride resource group that our goal as a group should be to listen, understand, connect, be there for the community internally and externally. And then if that means facilitating pride drives and being part of a celebration of that, then we want to support that. But that doesn't mean pushing it on communities that aren't ready for it. And so we had to really have that conversation with ourselves and understand what our true agenda is. And then, of course, continue making a difference in the world, because I think we all are. So these are the upcoming events that our group is participating in, that the Western New York Pride Resource Group has coordinated. So we're going to have a float at the Buffalo Pride Parade on June 1st. We're going to have a table at Pride in the Park in Hamburg on June 8th. Pride Palooza in the park at Binghamton. We'll have a table there on June 14th. We'll have a table at the Southern Finger Lakes Pride Festival in Corning, and I believe that the festival is the 13th and 14th. I believe our table will be the 14th. We'll have a table at the Rainbow City Pride in Niagara Falls, a table at Finger Lakes Pride Festival in Canandaigua. We will have a table, hopefully have a table. They haven't sent out the registration yet, but we'll hopefully have a table at Rochester Pride Picnic on July 13th, and then we'll both have a float and a table at the Rochester Pride Parade and Festival on June 19th. So please come to these events if you can, celebrate with us, sign up to volunteer. I think Carrie, maybe you can talk to, like, these will be available through Volunteer Connection to sign up. Can you talk to that, since you know that better than I do?
Yeah, of course. So we're looking for participants for both parades. I think the Rochester Pride Parade and the Buffalo Pride Parade are the only events on this list that have an actual parade component. I think everything else is just tabling. So we're looking for participants for either parade. You can sign up in Volunteer Connection, or I will in the Western New York events calendar, or I will just send out a link. We have Google Forms that you can also just use. I will send that link out in a follow-up email. The other events are all tabling, and we need volunteers. Nicole, maybe you and I can like touch base after this and just confirm 100% which events we're going to. And then I know that Lynn and Joanne have the Pride Palooza covered. But everything else, I mean, we want to have more than one person definitely at each table, just for like support. And so if you need to step away for a second, somebody else will be there, so it's never unguarded. So because we're going to have some really nice swag that we'll be handing out. So we definitely want to have more than one person. So if you are nearby and interested in any of these, please let us know. I will put these on the event calendar also in Volunteer Connection, so people can sign up there. But if you don't have access to Volunteer Connection, you can just reach out to one of us. And also, you know, this was fantastic information that Nicole just gave. This is a great way for all of us to kind of make sure we're approaching these with the right mindset. And then I have more information that I'll send in the email, like there's specific FAQs about specifically like the individual donor assessment, just to make sure the actual factual information, excuse me, the actual factual information that we have is we're all up to speed on that, as well as this more validating emotional component, because they have to go hand in hand. So that when we are talking about the facts, we're all correct and on the same page there. So a recording of this, those materials, and then also materials about our other lines of service, all of that is going to be in the follow-up email, and all of that will also be distributed to anybody who wants to table. So if you're interested in tabling, if you've never done it before, if you're in the Buffalo area, we're actually having, independently of this, a training table next week. But if you've never done it before, just I would say just go for it. Like, we'll make sure that you're prepared. We'll give you the information. Like, I wouldn't get hung up on whether or not you've done it before. If you're available to help with any of these events, we really are looking forward to having assistance from everybody. And also, I guess I'll just say, Nicole, yes, I will send this to Bernie. I will, I just saw your question in the chat, Ken. I will send this to Bernie. I will send a list of all of these to volunteer services in Rochester, Binghamton, and Buffalo. We can definitely send that information out so that they have this list, so that they can distribute it too for any of their tabling folks. But anyway, I just wanted to say too, with everything that Nicole just talked about, one thing Nicole and I have talked about a lot is the importance of discussing all of our lines of service as well as we can. Obviously, we're all coming to this with slightly different areas of expertise from the different areas in which we work, but everything that the Red Cross does can be life-saving. Nicole and I have said many times, like CPR, disaster prep, blood drives, those are all equally life-saving work, right? Like, having blood when somebody needs it is the same as being able to perform CPR and save somebody's life. So we want to make sure that we can kind of give all of that information so that whatever person or whatever community we're speaking to can decide what is most applicable for them at that time, where they need the most support. And then we also have our Buffalo Pride Drive coming up, which I can talk about, but is there anything else, Nicole, that you want to say before I talk about that.
Maybe just if we have a little bit of time, if anyone has reflections, or anything that they want to stop sharing, want to comment on, because I know I went through that really fast. So Ellen,
Yeah, I just wanted to say this was so valuable. Thank you. I I took a lot of notes and copied and pasted a lot of stuff because I want to do better in this area, and this was just really good information to think about.
thank you, thank you. I felt the same way going through it, so I'm glad you got that out of it. Dawn,
I agree. I think, there's a lot of aha moments in hearing and reading your presentation. Especially, in hindsight, it's always easy to analyze these things, but especially the idea, well, we've always been there for the Pride community, and think to myself, so it's okay that we did some of the things, but not all of the things, like we were there when your house burnt down or whatever, we were there, for the CPR class, right? Like that really is, that's the way we said it though, right? We said things like, we've always been there. It's just this one area that we didn't support you. And it's eye-opening to me to think about how that sounds, that it's okay because we did other things when it's really not okay. And we never really, you're right. At least I know personally, I never really acknowledged that, that I think the closest I ever came is saying we don't agree with the FDA policy, but I didn't acknowledge their personal history with that issue, the fact that the policy existed for so long and that it, created so many negative feelings and sort of, like you said, attacked their that they were responsible people, that they were caring people, that they also could be heroes like other people feel like when they give blood in those crisis situations. So thank you for sharing that information.
yeah, thank you for saying that. Thank you all for opportunity to share this too. And I think this was a really impactful learning experience for me going through this as well. Right.
Just one more thought.
Move on to the project then. Oh,
okay. Yeah, I just have one more thought. You know
sorry.
me. I always have one more thought. I just wanted to say too that when we're talking to communities, this information is so helpful for all sorts of folks. It's not just the LGBTQ plus community. There is other policies that I might not be as knowledgeable about, or other communities that have been harmed by the ways that the Red Cross or any organization has acted in the past. So it's just great information to have in general that's applicable anywhere. And a big thing for me is like intersectionality, being that people have multiple identities that overlap. So people can be parts of multiple minority communities at the same time. And, then this type of work is doubly important because there's multiple ways maybe that they've been harmed. So, yeah, just wanted to throw that out there.
Wendy?
Thanks very much for sharing that. I did want to say one thing, because I don't want to think that we're putting fear in everybody that if they're there, they're going to hear all of these types of things. Because I've been, since I started, I guess it's been 3 years now, but heavily in the community, and I do a lot of just get invited to wellness fairs, a lot in the city of Buffalo, and people are also, I do experience, I won't say I haven't experienced people, sharing completely understandable, concern and upset and that. But I've also had the opposite where people are really excited to have a discussion of where things are going forward.
Yeah.
They often have asked me, did the Red Cross participate in any way? And I said, we did. We participated in an advanced study that was part of this. And while it didn't change what was going on in the discrimination. They're happy in many cases to hear that. They're also happy that we're in the community and being willing to talk to them instead of hiding away. I've had elected officials, kind of call out and say, these organizations are here amongst us. So I think the fact sometimes of just putting ourselves there might be people that are like kind of looking like saying, oh, why are you here? But I also have probably experienced more people that are just happy to see us there and being willing to listen and have discussions. So I just don't want anyone to be feeling like, if they decided to table, that they would, come up against, everybody being upset.
Thank you, Wendy. That's a really, really good point. And I my experience isn't the same, which is why I was very very pro, like, let's get some pride drives in Rochester until, and I think that the pushback was really the way we were approaching it. So I think you're right. Like, there is a whole spectrum of responses to our presence, from excitement and like, we're so glad that you're finally here and that we can finally be involved, to to still that hurt and anger, and being able to have all of those conversations is important. And I think one of the conversations that we had is that there's also, like, with everything, there's like some generational differences. And so some of the younger people are who didn't experience as much of the discrimination have been more celebratory of, like, yes, we can do this now, we can take ownership, it's my choice now. Where I think, like, some of the older generations and I think we have some of the people in Rochester specifically who have shared their perspectives, I think are more they experienced more of it. So I think that every person is going to come with a very unique perspective based on their life experiences. And you're absolutely right that, like, a lot of that is going to be excitement, and that it's not going to be a negative experience, but that we shouldn't shy away or be anxious when the people come with a lot of pain. We need to lean into those conversations too. So thank you very much for bringing that up. I think that's really important.
And I'll just add, if it's okay, I think also, like, when we're in different communities, where the source of our contact is makes a big difference on what that. For example, the Buffalo Drives were born out of Jordan James, who his approach was, okay, we can't give, I don't like it, I know we still need blood. We're going to promote blood drives to encourage people to come, but at the same time, we're going to be raising up that we can't give. So depending how everybody, and everybody has a right to come at that a little differently. So I think when we're in communities where, depending on where the source of it, if you will, and I'm not saying a source is right or wrong, but just the approach of that source can drive how those events are viewed in the community.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because you can have, like, people who feel a sense of, like, this is important, I'm going to act on it, even though I disagree with the way this is handled. And then you can have people who feel the opposite and say, like, I am hurt by this, I want to act in a totally opposite way. So you're absolutely right. It's going to depend on the group, on the like the way that they're approaching their activism, and the fact that you said, like, they're all right. Like, every approach, every reaction to this is a correct response, and we just need to be sensitive and work with that, and build those connections in a way that's safe for everyone. I like that a lot.
I just wanted to call out, Kate threw a reference to Heart Head Heart in the chat, which is, I think, was part of my initial Red Cross training when I first started as an employee. So I don't know if it sounds like it's a pretty familiar phrase within the Red Cross, but you illustrated this in everything you said, Nicole, but this just sort of puts a word to it, which is you kind of start your response with, like, a heart, like, or a response. You provide information in the middle if needed, and then you end with kind of a heart phrase, like asking them what else they would like to see or revalidating them or something. So that I have found that particular phrasing for myself super helpful, because my first instinct is always just like, the pure logical information. And so that helps me like helps provide a reminder for myself for how to reply. So that might be another useful tool for people to kind of recall everything that you shared. If anybody has any thoughts on that.
Dawn.
I agree with you, Carrie. I think when I saw that comment in each of your responses, Nicole, I thought to myself, that's, you know, another one of those aha moments. Like, so we can explain the things we want to explain. We can think about their perspective on us and validate it. But in the end, we can't get to the right answer for any of these situations without engaging the people impacted, right? And so to have a statement that says, what are your thoughts? Like, what would you like to see? I wrote it down because I thought that's an important thing to say, right? The first one you said, what changes would you like to see going forward? Instead of assuming that we know them just because we've heard from other people, right? In the different conversations that happen over time, to just ask that individual to be able to contribute. It's just so respectful to do that. And I thought that was a good way to end the conversation on a high note. And then be serious, right? Take notes, take down information, whatever, about what they share with us so that we can bring it back to the organization.
And as we're going out into these events too, keep track of what kind of stuff you're hearing. And what we want to do is either in June or July or at kind of some point in the near future is really meet as a group and set our mission, set our goals, figure out kind of make a little bit more of a formal direction that we want to go, even though we still want kind of membership of the group to be sort of, we don't want to see it at the point where it's like you have to officially join a committee, you know, but we want the kind of goals to be more formalized. So we want to take the feedback that we're getting at these events and help that to guide us. And then also there's feedback on a grander scale. If anybody remembers Jerry Dale, who was at our very first meeting talking about all these initiatives, Jerry has been a major force behind our participation in these events, and enabling our participation in all of these events. And also they'll be collecting feedback from us after everything. So we want to have all that, whether you write it down or you email it to one of us or you just kind of keep it in mind. Like, we want to have all that feedback so that we can kind of work with that as needed.
Awesome. Thank you.
I do want to leave just a few minutes just to kind of touch base on the Buffalo Pride Drive. Are there any other questions or anything before we do that? Okay, so I know not everybody in the call is from the Buffalo area, but we are looking for folks in the Buffalo area to help spread the word about the upcoming Buffalo Pride Drive. Wendy, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Really super excited about the Buffalo Pride Drive. It used to be called the Gay Alliance Drive. We did make the change to Pride Alliance. And of course there was some there were some positives and negative conversation about that, as with anything, but we've been running it now as the Pride Alliance. We use the sponsor code Blood is Blood in honoring Jordan's Blood is Blood organization. It is co-sponsored by multiple organizations. One is us as a Pride Resource Group. The other is Blood is Blood. It used to be Good Deeds Buffalo, but then Jordan became a national, so it's Good Deeds America. Which is kind of fun that we get that you know, approach, you know, in the publicity in that he has put up the event for. We've also had the Rainbow Collective of Western New York, which used to be Hamburg Pride Group. We're going to their Pride in the Park event. They did a small drive for me. They promoted in February, which is a great thing. I just wanted to say that, you know, just as so you guys know, like in donor recruitment, as part of our initiatives, when we are talking to blood program sponsors, we are talking about multiple initiatives, and one of them is our LGBTQ initiative. So we are actually talking, if you will say, talking Pride all year round with our sponsors. as the importance, because we're reaching out on that. So just a little note on that, which I do really like, that you know, when we're in those different environments with employee resource groups and different organizations, we're having that conversation. So Carrie has a email that I sent over that's got some information in there, a ton of information. Some people way more than you'll need, but just pick and choose what works for you. At a minimum, there's a graphic of the flyer. There are some other graphics that go with our LGBTQ initiative. There's a suggested message, so you don't even have to, you know, reinvent the wheel. You can cut and paste. But, you know, I will tell you this, the most important thing is personal asks, explaining that, you know, this is the community coming together for this. And we've had other groups jump on at the last minute in the past, which has really been great. And so, but again, personal asks, and I do have an email if you read it. You know, if you text folks, again, letting people know why this is important to you. You know, this is yes, a celebration to including inclusiveness and the IDA. It's to help educate people and let them know about the changes, because many people still do not know about the changes. And it's an opportunity for people to give in allyship and support. So it's really a kind of encompassing event. We've done well in the past, but we do need to keep getting the word out. So I know some of you that don't live in the area, but if you have social media and you have friends in the area, organizations in the area, we really would appreciate your support on that. I wasn't too prepared to talk, Carrie, so I wasn't you could cover it. So sorry about that. But
sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the
no,
spot.
it's okay. No, that's okay. The biggest thing is really inviting people, and then we are going to need some folks that day. Maybe Kara get a schedule out to see, like, you know, we need some people just there greeting. We use a blood donor ambassador to do the registration, but we do need to have probably 2 people there at all times to talk to people. And Kara will tell you, actually, it's really fun. The donors, you know, we have put up a little wall. I think we probably still do that again, Carrie, right? You know, like why I give with the sticky notes, and there was some really heartfelt reasons why people put on there that they chose to give. And then we have to man the canteen. We have to staff the canteen because we put the canteen in another room, so the staff doesn't have eyes on it. So we have to have 1 person in there at all time.
So the donor ambassadors who will be doing that drive, it's a couple, so there will be 2 people there. But Wendy, we can touch base, or you can just let me know if you need help, like setting up or cleaning up.
Oh, it's not Linda. Linda didn't sign up.
No, Linda can't go. It's Jackie and May. I don't know if you've worked with Jackie and Malin before, but they'll be there.
Okay.
So, but you and I can maybe, if there's like setup or cleanup, or if you need a 3rd person there during the day, maybe you and I can touch base about those needs, and then I can like share those.
If we have a couple, I would say we need at least 1 more person there, if not 2 still, just to. Because if somebody has to go to take a break, but you and I can talk about that. Yeah, we're still going to need to have some folks there. So.
Okay.
I was actually just going to ask, would you mind sending out that email? Because I know you probably sent it out before, but for me at least, like this was finals week, so I was just shepherding everybody through and getting things in.
You didn't miss it.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell I missed. So
yeah,
I'm sure it's there, but
no, actually, Wendy just sent it to me the other day, so I have not distributed it yet. So I can maybe just include. Maybe I'll just send like a mega email after today and include everything that we talked about today, the resources for tabling and stuff, and then include the Pride information too, and a list of all the events. If that's not going to be like too much, but maybe we can just put it all together.
But that's it. We need donors.
Yes.
We need donors. Because also it is Corporate Challenge Day, we found out.
Oh, the
Corporate Challenge in Delaware Park,
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions or any other discussion points? Nicole, is there anything else that you want to add on at the end here?
No, I think this was great. Thank you all.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody so much for coming. We will assemble the previously mentioned mega email and send that out. Everybody have a great weekend.
Thanks.
Can I
Take care.
talk to you real quick, Carrie? I wanted to follow up with you on an email.
Yeah, sure.